Antaeus as my first illusion, and then the Fortis Factory as my second illusion. Solnit first references Antaeus, who is a giant in Greek mythology. On page 46, she references Orwell's anarchist friend George Woodcock, who compared Orwell to Antaeus. What Woodcock wrote was, the source of his self-regenerative power lay in his joy in the ordinary, common experiences of day-to-day existence, and particularly of contact with nature. He fed from the earth like Antaeus. And so then she goes on to describe the difference between happiness and joy, and a big reason why she uses the illusion of Antaeus is to describe how Orwell was connected to nature throughout his life, and he found joy in each moment, and he wasn't merely content with just happiness by itself, but instead he pursued joy, because joy remakes people through combat with forces of subjection, i.e. subjugation. Joy is a de-subjectifying process, and unfixing and an intensification of life itself. It is a process of coming alive and coming apart, whereas happiness is used as a numbing anesthetic that induces dependence. Joy is the growth of people's capacity to do and feel new things in ways that can break this dependence. So Orwell, I think, put this philosophical concept into his writing, where he wasn't merely happy with the familiar and the comfortable. And so Solnit makes this allusion to the giant, because Antaeus is an interesting figure in Greek mythology. Britannica describes him as a giant of Libya, the son of the sea god Poseidon and the earth goddess Gaia. And so his myth is, according to Britannica, is that he forced all strangers who passed through his land to wrestle with him, and when his foes would take him to the ground, he would become stronger because Gaia is his mother, and she would help him win battles that he would normally lose. And so he would, with his foes' corpses, he would build a shrine to Poseidon, and he would use their skulls. And so this is a strong reference to compare Orwell to, because he drawing his strength from nature and earth and not backing down, describing him as a revolutionary rather than something more tame. This is a good depiction of his life and what he stood for. And then Theoi.com, which is an index for Greek mythology, also describes the mythology behind Antaeus, and the person who wrote the article speaks of how the only person to beat Antaeus was Hercules, who realized that his strength came from the earth, and so therefore he took advantage of that and lifted him up and crushed his ribs and killed him. So he was the only one to be able to beat the Titan. And Antaeus also crops up in Dante, where at Dante's World's website, it's described that Antaeus is unfettered, as to use their word, because he was born after the Titans waged war with the gods. And so this is an interesting aspect to the myth, because it kind of describes Orwell in a way. Orwell unshackled himself. He was a free giant among history. And I think Solnit's getting at all of this by simply referring to Antaeus in that one line, how he fed from the earth. It ascribes all these qualities to Orwell without much else. She just needs to say Antaeus. So Antaeus was an interesting illusion. The second illusion that I found was the Fortis Factory, where Solnit describes her experience witnessing rose workers doing their day-to-day work, and she found it very disturbing. And so the whole chapter of the ugliness of roses, she describes the human rights abuses and the just kind of dehumanization of the labor force. She wasn't even able to speak with workers because they were so busy trying to complete their tasks, and she wishes that wasn't the case because she feels complicit in this system because she's on the side of the managers because she's not in the financial situation where she has to work a job like this. So this was an interesting allusion to compare the assembly of bouquets to the Fortis factory, because the Fortis factory is quite it's a simultaneously disturbing illusion and part of our history, of our country's history, as well as a fascinating one because it's what the Fortis factory and Fortism was that it was a particular form of industrial production originating in the early 20th century and characterized by the mass production of a standardized good assembly line techniques, use of dedicated machines, a large de-skilled and often unionized male labor force, and a centralized corporate industrial structure. And so this is from Science Direct, and it's written by R. Hudson. And this whole article goes into the details of how Fortism came about, and then it explains the process and the intricacy of this this system. And so Solnit is referring to the Fortis factory because the Fortis factory was notorious for not caring about people as people and instead seeing them as hands or ways to produce products instead of actually having feelings. And so Frederick Thompson, in his article "Fortism, Post-Fortism, and the Flexible System of Production," he describes the shift from craft production to mass production, which was largely inspired by Henry Ford, but there were many other people involved as well. But Henry Ford's he was one of the major people to change the way society viewed production, and it was efficient, but it came with a cost, and the cost, according to Stephen Meyer in his article "The Degradation of Work Revisited: Workers and Technology in the American Auto Industry, 1900 to 2000." He describes how the Fordism completely transformed the various work tasks and work routines of Ford workers and created the repetitive, monotonous, and alienating work of the modern industrial world. Second, it altered the traditional social relationships of the workplace as the role of skilled craftsmen declined and the role of the de-skilled or unskilled specialized workers increased. Third, the mass production system instituted new forms of control over the new unskilled workforce that now labored at the single-purpose machines or on the new assembly lines. And so the main takeaway here is that Solnit, as well as Meyer, the Fordism changed our world, but it's not necessarily for the better for the average person, for the common person. And she alludes to this historical phenomenon, and that's still ongoing today because she very clearly in her chapter disapproves of the way these workers were being treated in the Rose factory. So I thought that was an interesting allusion because it's just very subtle. It appears at the end of the paragraph, but it's a loaded allusion because it has a lot of connotations with not caring about workers' rights. So those are the two allusions I chose.